Welcome back to another video. My name is MaraK and this is episode 9 of Let's Design. I'm continuing the Ninjago theme as promised because today I'm going to be designing the Oni Temple. If you are watching my survival series, first of all, thank you. And second, you know I do a lot of floating islands there as I'm working on a base in the sky. So today I'm going to show you how I design my floating islands since the Oni Temple is just a giant floating island. I always start with a flat shape. This time it's a circle. And then I start placing sand spheres on top to create a spike. The Oni Temple has one main spike sticking down from the center of the build and one smaller spike on the left. On the bottom side of the Oni Temple, there are also boulders all around the main spike, making sort of foundation for the mountain on top. I made them using smaller sphere sand brush. Then I started smoothing out the spike by hand to make the shape right. I'm doing it by hand because the smooth brush world that it has is not that good. It has its pros, that's why I briefly used it to get rid of the remains of the sand spheres. But the con is, it wants to make everything flat, so to achieve the right shape I have to make it myself. If you know any better way to do it, leave it in the comments. When I was done with the shaping, I changed the sand into stone and started working on the purple crystals. First one I did was the one on top of the spike, or rather, on the bottom of the whole island. I used purple and magenta stained glass because they are the closest in color to the crystals on the Oni Temple. But since it's glass, I wanted to make it less see-through by using amethyst blocks and frog lights. It didn't work out the way I wanted. I was expecting the two colors of glass to make sort of fog effect. But to achieve that, I would have to make more layers of the glass, and it would make the crystal too bulky. The rest of the crystals were made using mostly magenta glass with purple glass as shading. Speaking of shading, after the crystals on the bottom were finished, I used andesite to make the bottom of the boulders look lighter and tough blocks to make the parts hidden behind the boulders look darker. After that, I flipped the whole bottom part upside down, so I could start working on the rest of the temple. Instead of sand spheres, I used sand cylinders to make the main part. That's because the terrain of the Oni Temple has lots of platforms with different sizes and different elevations. And cylinders are perfect for making that shape. I started at the front, where the mask is, and then I made my way around the circumference of the circle, slowly making my way into the center. Besides the platforms, there are also 3 tall pillars, on one of which there are floating islands with what looks like torii gates, temples, and the Overlord's throne. I will build that in a bit. While collecting pictures, I luckily found a picture from the side, which really helped me with building the back and placing everything where it's supposed to be. On the other hand, it was a picture from only one side, so the other side I had to improvise a little. When the shape was mostly done, I changed everything to stone again and started working on the parts that I couldn't do using sand, because those parts don't have any solid surface underneath. Now it's time for the Oni mask, the main feature of the temple. I used white wool to shape it up, and then change it to andesite. When I finished the face, I made the crystal horns, eyes, and the crystal in its forehead. I made the teeth using dripstone and then used light gray concrete, stone, and tuff for shading. After the mask, I made the second platform on the left side of the mountain, and then moved on to one of the peaks to make the floating islands and the staircase to the top. I struggled with this part a little because the scale of this build is too small. If I wanted to build the whole thing 1-to-1, it would need to be like 3 times bigger. I'm also convinced that the makers of the show are changing the scale as they please. On the close-up shots, it looks much bigger than on the pics of the whole thing. I also struggled with the staircase to the floating islands. In the show, they are made from floating stones, which I wanted to recreate here, but Minecraft blocks are too big for that. So I made a slab staircase in which I punched holes into and tried to separate each step of the stairs as much as possible. The islands look very similar to each other. Each side has 3 islands with the same features, but they are not mirrored, so I switched their positions when I copied them to the other side. Now it's time for the finishing touches. I added more rocks to the mountain because the bottom platform was too big. Then I moved above the mask because there are 2 rocks with cave entrances. I made the entrances dark using black concrete so you can't really see what's inside. When all the rocks were done, I started adding layers of dirt and grass as it is in the show. Not every platform has a grass top, but only some of them up until a certain height. I used the overlay command for some of the platforms, but I built most of it by hand again, because even though the overlay command can cover the whole surface, most of the platforms weren't big enough to be worth using commands. Continuing with the finishing touches, I grabbed magenta and purple glass again and started adding more crystals. Most of the crystals are small and done quickly, but at the back there is this giant crystal sticking out with smaller crystals sticking out on every side. I slowly made my way from the edge of the mountain to the center where the floating islands are, and when I got to the top I switched from glass to amethyst crystals. They look much more like the crystals in the show and are small enough to fit on the platforms. With the crystals placed, I started adding the torii gates and shrines. As you can see, I wanted to use end rods for the torii gates, but they were too thin, so I replaced them with colored concrete and then copied everything to the other side. Last thing on the mountain I'm going to add is crystals on top of the 2 remaining pillars and an entrance in the mouth of the Oni mask, with a giant room for you to put interior in. I also connected it with the cave entrances and with the bridge entrance, connecting the room inside with the platform at the top. But there is still one detail missing before we can call the build finished: floating rocks around the mountain. And we are done. Enjoy the cinematic. And that's it for this video. If you liked it, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos, please subscribe and click the bell. Tell me in the comments, what do you think about this build? I read all the comments and I appreciate each and every one of them. You can also give me more suggestions for what should I build. I would like to continue with the Ninjago theme, but there aren't many iconic builds left, so once I run out of Ninjago themed builds, I would like to move on to something else. Maybe some other Ninjago theme, perhaps? Like I said, put your suggestions under this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.